All righty, welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Wednesday, March 29th, and today we're going to be talking what else? Recruiting. Obviously, there's a lot of momentum, a lot of good stuff rolling for Oklahoma right now, a lot of moving parts. So we're going to be diving in on some aftermath of the weekend. Seems like some kids are still taking some visits or are planning to here pretty quickly. Obviously, with the spring semester nearing the end there, with spring break and everything, there's some availability for kids to make trips and really start looking in the summer. So today we're going to be talking about Jayden Hardy. Jayden Hardy's been getting a bunch of crystal balls in favor of Oklahoma. Talk a little Aaron Flowers, that safety of Hardy and Flowers. Can they be both Sooners? And then we're going to be talking about the wide receiver position. Amari Jefferson put Oklahoma in the top 12. Josiah Martin, does he get an offer? Kobe Young, and then another 2025 linebacker and Christian Thatcher. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as I alluded to, Jayden Hardy, we talked about him. I think we talked about him in the most recent episode or maybe the one before, but Hardy's the safety out of Louisville, Texas, 5'11", 165-pound kid, number 13 safety overall. On 247, he's got 3 crystal balls in favor of Oklahoma here. It seems like every time I get on Twitter, there is some new insider putting a crystal ball in on their respective website in favor of Oklahoma here. And, from what I can tell, he's not come out and officially announced a commitment date. But what I do find interesting is I do think it's somewhat imminent, or he's made it abundantly clear where he wants to go to someone or multiple people, because I think it's interesting that all these people are coming out and saying this is where he's going to go. And I don't think this many crystal balls come in unless there's a commitment sometime in the future, at least near future. What do you think?
So it's going to bring up some bad memories for people, but this is essentially starting to look like what it was like for David Hicks leading up to the day he ended up flipping to A&M. I don't believe that Jayden is in any way silently committed, and it's just going to be he's maybe taking a couple more visits, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's before the end of the school year that he's committed to OU. If that's the case, we would have, or even sooner, we would have 2 guys in the defensive back room already committed, and then 1 offensive player and potentially Mike Hawkins. Again, I think we said it last time, shows that Valai and Brandon Hall are a mean duo in the recruiting trail. I think Jay Valai definitely deserves a lot of credit, but Brandon Hall is kind of the unsung hero when it comes to recruiting the DBs. You don't hear a lot of talk about him, but he is just a silent assassin out there. He knows how to connect with these kids and gets them to buy into what's happening at Oklahoma, even with the 4 season now. They can't do 2 poor seasons in a row. You can't look like dog shit 2 seasons in your first 2 seasons. There definitely needs to be an improvement. So as long as the improvement is there next fall, I think this is going to be something that we should all maybe get comfortable with over the next few seasons, because those 2 guys, who knows, they might get poached by a different school over the next few years, but as long as they're there, I think Oklahoma's in the best hands when it comes to recruiting defensive backs.
And, talking about Jay Valai and Brandon Hall, I do agree with you. I think Jay Valai does deserve a lot of credit for this. He seems to be a lead recruiter or the lead recruiter for a lot of kids, not even necessarily defensive backs, just because that's the type of guy he is. But I do agree. Brandon Hall, at the end of the day, if you're going to go play safety for Oklahoma or any school, you have to like your positional coach, and he's doing a great job as well. Hardy visited Oklahoma earlier this month, the first weekend of March, and he anticipates coming back for the spring game. This is me speculating. I do agree with you. I think he's committed to Oklahoma before the start of the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the guys that trickles in after the spring game. I think maybe not, the Saturday, the 22nd on that day, but I wouldn't be surprised the week after at some point he sets his commitment date or announcement date, or maybe he just comes out of the blue and just says, hey, I'm committed. That's what I think. And obviously that's a good thing. And being such a highly rated safety, and talking about another safety, and we talked about him as well, as Aaron Flowers, 2024 4-star out of Forney, Texas, number 10 safety in the class. We, for the longest time, seemed like, in my mind, it seemed like Jayden Hardy was more the long shot and Aaron Flowers was more a slam dunk for Oklahoma. It seems like we have flip-flopped here. Aaron Flowers has taken some visits to Oregon, USC, other programs, and he's coming off a visit this past weekend at USC, and he has that post-visit high. And it seems like USC has taken the lead here, and which is fair. I mean, we talked about him a little bit on the last video. Like, why, as a defensive back, would you want to go to Southern Cal? I mean, we know the issues they have. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't look at their football program, they do offer a lot of things as far as education goes, off the field, beaches, money, other things like that are attractive to kids coming out of high school. I do think Forney, Texas is a long way from LA. I do think that comes into the factor here, or it comes into a factor in his decision. But I wouldn't rule out that Oklahoma isn't the team that is announced on April 7th. I feel like that Oklahoma, what they're doing is they're playing a little bit of catch up. And I think it's a Gentry Williams situation. I think Aaron Flowers wants to go to Oklahoma, and he went to USC, had a great time, and is on that post-visit high right now. And I think when it comes time to make a decision as far as your distance and the football development at Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma's too hard to beat out here. I almost want to say that Oklahoma is going to be the decision on Aaron Flowers by April 7th. That's a week and a couple days at this point. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, that would definitely be a huge surprise at this point. It doesn't seem like it's trending in Oklahoma's direction, but if you end up getting that right, you might be coming back from the future, and you just got to tell us who's in the entire recruiting class at that point. Dante Williams for USC is a good recruiter. If you go to his 247 page, he's recruited some very talented individuals. Corey Foreman, 5-star. Zachariah Branch, 5-star from last year. Recruited Justin Flo. Damani Jackson. Like, he's very good at his job. And he's gotten kids to go to USC even when they were terrible and didn't seem like there was any light at the end of the tunnel for them. Now they have Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. Whatever you think about them, at the end of the day, they are likely to win football games. And Dante, that just helps Dante's case when it comes to recruiting guys to USC. Now, as Oklahoma fans, and really anyone that's watched football last year, does it make sense for any defensive players to go to USC? No. But before Brent Venables, did it make sense for any defensive players to come to Oklahoma whenever Lincoln and Grinch were here? No. But somehow they ended up getting a few guys to go to OU. And they're going to do the same thing at SC. Aaron Flowers, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully for him, it's not like a bookie situation where he gets put in the wrong position and then kind of set up for failure from the beginning. I think he's still a very talented player. Could be good. We'll see what happens when April 7th comes, but SC, at the end of the day, like you mentioned, does offer other things outside of football. And as long as Caleb Williams is their quarterback, if he can get on the field, maybe they get to a playoff game, but their defense is still a huge question mark.
It definitely is. I mean, at the end of the day, I agree with you. I mean, what was the appeal to going to Oklahoma playing for a historically bad defense? I mean, you get the opportunity to play at a big-time program, and you can see the field quickly if you're just talented enough. And that's what our excuse, or what our reasoning was, selling point on some defensive linemen and defensive backs at one point, not too long ago, literally like last year. I mean, still along the defensive line, if you're good enough, like a David Stone or a Williams Noweri, I mean, you come in, you can play as a freshman. Defensive back's a little bit of a different story, but think of a scenario where they've got Jeremiah Newcomb, Jayden Hardy, and Aaron Flowers committed by the spring game. That's a lot of defensive back talent. Now, that is the ideal scenario. Even if they go 1 for 2 on these safeties, still having Hardy and Newcomb already in the bag, by April, that would be ideal. I mean, I think that a couple years ago, we would be happy as that being a haul for the whole class with that much talent. I wouldn't be shocked if they're all committed to Oklahoma by the 1st of May. But at the end of the day, even if Flowers commits to USC, I don't think this is over.
One thing that's going to be, I think, while you make fair points, it works against Aaron Flowers being part of this class because there still needs to be a spot for Mikel Patterson McDonald. And it seems like he's a take regardless, and we have to have a spot there available for him. I mean, we'll see, right? It doesn't seem likely that they would take 3 or 4 safeties in this class. Really 3. They're probably going to limit it to 2 and then maybe get 3 corners, because defensive corners can be moved to safety if that is where they feel more, if coaches feel they are best suited once they get to college. Seems a little tougher to move a safety to corner just depending on how they played in high school, but we'll see what happens. I think really it's going to end up just how many spots are there available for secondary players and how do they feel about other guys. I think Mikel Patterson McDonald's going to be one of those guys that's going to get a spot. I know we've talked about plenty of other DBs that I can't start naming off the top of my head, but there's other guys out there that Oklahoma's still in on, and that might be what detracts Aaron Flowers from putting on the Crimson and Cream.
It very well could be, and I do agree with you that Mikel Patterson McDonald's a take no matter what. And I do think that will start playing in a factor into numbers because there's only so many scholarships to go around. So I do agree with you. It will be interesting to see, with Aaron Flowers making his decision. I hope he's part of this class. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on it. So let's move on to another topic. We're going to switch sides of the ball, talk about the wide receiver for the next couple guys here. And this is a guy that we haven't ever talked about before, Amari Jefferson, 2024 4-star wide receiver out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, 6'2", 195-pound, dual sport athlete, baseball and football player. He recently put out a top 12. That top 12 included Alabama, Clemson, Colorado, Oregon, Florida State, Penn State, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Georgia, Miami, South Carolina, and Georgia Tech. We were talking about this before we hopped on the show, and you pointed this out, so I have to give you credit here. On his Twitter profile, he says he's a Vol baseball commit, and he's from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm not sure that how you can be committed to a baseball program and still putting out a top 12 for football. What are some of your thoughts?
So this recruitment is going to be weird overall, assuming even if Oklahoma doesn't stick in it all the way to the end. If you look at his, like you mentioned, we found out he's committed to play baseball at Tennessee. Fantastic baseball program. Fine. Tennessee, you would assume then, is his number one school. But if you look at his 24/7 page, there's only 2 schools marked as warm for how it's trending in regards to his commitment. Alabama and Georgia. 2 powerhouses, and when it comes to college football, Tennessee is not one of those. You would assume then that commitment to play baseball at Tennessee is not something that he's really tied to, probably, unless he ends up going to Tennessee, not happening. And I don't know, it's just weird. Like, how can you be committed to a school to play one sport, but your football recruitment isn't trending to go play at that same school? You would assume he would just already have been a Tennessee football and baseball commit if that were the case, but I guess not. At the end of the day, he's a talented guy, and if Oklahoma can fight their way through because there's plenty of roadblocks. He's from Tennessee, right in Tennessee's backyard. You're going up against 2-time national champs. You're going up against Alabama. If you can keep in this recruitment, I think Oklahoma and Emmett Jones can make some impressions that will help. But I wouldn't get my hopes up here. I think it's kind of like we always say, top 12. Like you're kind of putting the schools that you are kind of just narrowing it down to, and you kind of really just got to see what happens. The fact that it's I can't say it enough. The fact that he's committed to play baseball at Tennessee, but not, I guess his football recruitment isn't trending in that direction is weird to me.
It's really odd, and maybe it's one of those deals that if he ends, football is the ultimate decision maker. If he ends up at Tennessee, he'll play both because he doesn't maybe necessarily hold offers from Alabama, Georgia, or Oklahoma for baseball. I really don't know if he holds an offer from Oklahoma in baseball. I don't imagine he does. But maybe it's one of those deals that if I end up at Tennessee, I'm going to play baseball there too. If not, no big deal. But again, we've talked about it at length on this show. Top 12 is kind of where it starts whittling down, but it really isn't that, that meaningful in my mind. I feel like Oklahoma's just on there for more of the name and the fan base, in my opinion. I don't necessarily think that he will legitimately end up and be a part of this 2024 class. Maybe that's just me being pessimistic, but I just feel like that Oklahoma's in a better spot with a handful of other wide receivers like a Zion Kearney, and maybe like Bryant Wesco, and some others, and even another guy that we're about to talk about that they hosted this week, or maybe it's actually today as this video is being released. They're hosting Josiah Martin that we'll talk about here in just a minute. I just feel like Emmett Jones will have other options that will most likely occur. But I'm not saying it couldn't happen. It's just my gut is telling me that.
It's, we always say where there's smoke, there's fire when it comes to some of these recruitments, i.e. Jayden Hardy. This is really more like an ember that you either nurture or just gets put out naturally. We'll see. Again, we'll see what happens. It's just top 12, right? You are in the mix, but how much are you pursuing him, and vice versa? How much interest does he have after a visit? Because I don't believe he's been on campus quite yet either.
Yeah. So maybe it comes out for the spring game, and maybe we have a totally different topic conversation, but you got to get on campus to make a difference and really understand what's going on. So as I alluded to, let's stay on the wide receiver area. Josiah Martin, 6 foot, 170-pound wide receiver out of Denton Guyer High School in Texas. He's a 2024 3-star wide receiver. Last year as a sophomore or as a junior, put up 60 catches, 878 yards, 9 touchdowns. Obviously caught footballs from Jackson Arnold. He just picked up an offer from Alabama on March 22nd. He currently doesn't hold an offer from Oklahoma, but he is scheduled to visit Oklahoma according to his Twitter profile today, as this video is being released on Wednesday, the 29th. I assume he's just making a day trip up just because Denton, Texas is a short drive. So Oklahoma's hosting him. I do think it's going to be interesting to see if Oklahoma does indeed decide to offer here. It seems like that it would make a lot of sense. He's probably a little bit of an underrated guy, considering his stats, considering his size, considering his offers. I mean, Alabama's in there, Arkansas's in there, some others are in there. 29 offers right now. Not a lot of guys that are ranked like 500 something on overall in a composite rating hold 29 offers from Power 5 schools, mostly Power 5 schools. So this seems like a guy that could be considered underrated. I don't understand. I would certainly hope Oklahoma would offer here. What do you think?
I would assume that he leaves with an offer. It would be very weird if he didn't. It's kind of weird that he doesn't have one already, but it may have been, again, because Emmett Jones wasn't there, so they weren't doing too many offers pre having a fully established wide receiver coach there. Also, if he does get an offer, you would assume Oklahoma makes it pretty close to the top of that list, given his relationship with Jackson, Peyton Bowen. We were able to pull Eli Bowen, potentially supposed to be part of this class. A lot of things are, assuming he gets an offer, would point towards Oklahoma to be a potential landing spot and a legitimate one. then it again dwindles down to how many spots are available for wide receivers. Is Josiah Martin a take? Because he is very talented, and you made a great point there. There's not very many guys that are in that range of ranking where he is that hold this many offers from Power Five programs. Typically, they have a few, maybe 4 or 5, and then a lot of mid majors. But this is a legit dude that I think is just flying under the radar right now. Maybe they credited Jackson Arnold a lot for what was happening on the field, but this over this next year and 7-on-7s and camps and during his senior season, he gets to prove that he was also just as important to the offense as Jackson was in last year's production. We'll see. It's going to be interesting at the end of the day for spots. It's going to be a spot race. If again, assuming Josiah Martin and Oklahoma mix well and they extend an offer, and then who are they going to take? How many wide receivers will they take? So you mentioned it, Bryant Wesco, where Oklahoma seems to be in a very good spot. In who was the other guy? Zion Kearney, another guy very talented, seems to be in a good spot. And there's also other wide receivers that Oklahoma has been actively recruiting for Emmett Jones' tenure. And now are you falling behind here? Like we'll see, but you would assume Josiah Martin would at least really look into being at Oklahoma to go catch balls from his high school quarterback.
I think this is something that Oklahoma's going to have to offer now. Otherwise, the ship's going to sail. Kind of like a Cole Adams. I mean, remember? I mean, it's like you either do it now or I'm out. And then he went. I remember Cole Adams went and visited Oklahoma. He left without an offer. And it seemed like at that point, Cole Adams just said, "Guy, I'm out." And then Oklahoma circled around on a later date. And it was already too late. And he pretty much was at a decision to go to Alabama. I just wonder if people are unsure. Some probably feel really confident with him. Some might not. I just don't understand how a guy that holds 29 offers, one being from Alabama, you've got his quarterback on campus. He's right down the road. He holds an offer from Oregon, Tennessee, Wisconsin. And they're not in, Arkansas, TCU. He's got great offers. Obviously, a lot of people see a lot of things in him. So I guess we'll see. But again, Oklahoma's in a great spot for wide receivers. But at the end of the day, we're going to see what ends up happening. Staying on the wide receiver side, this is a guy that Oklahoma posted and has already offered. I think they offered in February, mid-February, is Kobe Young, 5'11", 175-pound wide receiver, another 3-star out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Hosted him for a visit this past weekend. Seemed like everything went really well. He currently has a crystal ball in favor of LSU from Steve Wiltfong. I think he'll come up and make another visit or two to Oklahoma. This is a guy that I feel like at the end of the day, LSU, if they want him, which obviously they do, they've offered him. He's got a crystal ball in favor of LSU. I feel like if LSU wants him, and they do, I think they're going to be too hard to overcome here. And I feel like Kobe's genuinely interested in Oklahoma. But I just think being from New Orleans, it's hard to leave New Orleans. And LSU generally doesn't lose out on players like this. What do you think?
If somehow Oklahoma can make it a competition with LSU, I think as fans, we should feel excited in the hire of Emmett Jones. You said it perfectly. It's going to be really tough to crack that relationship between LSU and Young. Could it happen? Sure, but there's distance that's going to play a factor. There's other schools closer to him that I'm sure he's got an option to go to. And LSU, I mean, they don't really lose out on in-state talent, especially some that are that close. I'm sure you probably grew up an LSU fan. You kind of just assume it's going to go their way. But making it interesting against LSU would be, I think, an achievement of its own, because it's not easy to go into New Orleans and go into LSU's territory and pull anyone away. If you can do that, you did something right.
For sure, for sure. So again, the wide receiver room and position is not something that I'm overly concerned about, but it's something that Oklahoma, I think, is going to do really well in this 24 class. I just don't see him being a part of this class. But crazier things have happened, you know. New spots fill up at LSU and there's not a spot for him. And then all of a sudden, Oklahoma's in the mix, or maybe it's just he takes another visit or two and then realizes he wants to stay home in Baton Rouge and is a Tiger. So again, expectations are low here. Oklahoma's going to be fine. I just think it would be hard for Oklahoma to win out in this, but they've done it before. So, but that's as far as 24. The 2024 class. And the last guy we can talk about here, but before we do that, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything is linked in the description below. And remember, when you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. Helps us out a lot. It really spreads the word. I think on Spotify, we're over 40 reviews, so we appreciate everyone that has done that. And if you haven't, just take 2 seconds and help us out. I got a light I got to replace here. That just... it's going out right now, so I got to change that. But 2025, he's unranked linebacker out of Las Vegas is Christian Thatcher. He 6'2", 195-pound kid, as a sophomore in high school. Went and visited Oklahoma this past weekend. Excuse me. And he left Oklahoma. It seemed like it went really, really well. Showed a lot of love to Oklahoma on his Twitter profile. And so much that Parker Thune entered a crystal ball in Tuesday morning in favor of Oklahoma at a 7 confidence. For a 25 kid that won't put his name to paper for a year and 9 months, 21 months from now or whatever, a long time, but it's a lot of confidence. And Parker, more times than not, is right, even about being really early to the party on some of these crystal balls compared to like other insiders. I haven't really watched a whole lot about him because, again, it's 2025. But what's some of your overall thoughts? Linebacker Brent Venables here. He's not this prime recruiter, but it's him and Ted Roof. Obviously seemed to have made him a priority.
He's very impressive, especially for as young as he is. It is crazy that there is a crystal ball with such high confidence. I guess at this point we'll see how commitment happens with him. Are they going to force him to take other visits, kind of like they did with David Stone? Or are they going to handle a little bit more like Kevin Sperry, where take a couple more visits, come back to Oklahoma, and if you still feel as strongly as you did this last time around, we'll go ahead and take it. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, he's very talented. Obviously, he only just finished his sophomore season, so there's still some developing to do physically and within his gameplay. But he has a nose for the ball, and he looks like he hits hard out as 16-year-old. He already looks pretty intimidating on the football field, so I can't imagine that he's going to regress at this point. If he has that passion for it, he'll be just fine. And you mentioned it, Brent Venables being there probably helps his excitement to be at Oklahoma.
And just from a quick statistic lookup, this kid is a tackling machine. He's sideline to sideline. So he played as a true freshman, a freshman in high school and a sophomore. Freshman year had 99 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss. As a sophomore last year, had 133 total tackles, 13 tackles for loss. This guy is all over the place. He has 4 sacks his freshman year, 3 sacks this past year. The guy is everywhere. And as a sophomore. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Obviously we're learning and getting familiar with all these kids in 24 and 25 and even a little bit into 26, which is hard for me to even wrap my mind around that we're already talking about 2026 kids. But this kid is really good, and he's going to be rated as a 4-star or a 5-star before we know it. So people might not be overly impressed right now because there's no ratings and very few offers, but he's a sophomore in high school going into his junior year. you're going to see a lot of offers and a lot of ratings come in for him between now and end of this year, in December. You're going to see him get rated pretty highly. I mean, 133 tackles as a sophomore, and you're playing as a true freshman. Gosh, I keep saying a true freshman. You play as a freshman in high school. It's impressive.
Yeah, even if he were to be lower ranked, he would be kind of like a diamond in the rough, kind of like Phil Picciotti. Phil was a 3-star when Oklahoma first offered. He might have even been unranked. I don't remember, but his stats did not, compared to where he was ranked, it didn't make sense. He was a tackling machine just like this guy.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. It would be crazy if we somehow have 2 2025 commits before we have 2 in 2024. That really at this point seems very unlikely, but we had 1 in 2025 before we had a 1 in 24. So I guess it's possible.
It is possible. So you're telling me there's a chance. So anyway, this weekend went really well. Oklahoma's still hosting more players this week. We'll continue to cover that. But that's all I've got. Jose, do you want to do the individual challenge here?
Yeah. So if you're not on social media, you probably weren't aware. Peyton Bowen missed practice earlier this week. He had his sister passed away after giving birth to her baby, which is obviously very terrible. And we hope that the entire family is doing well. Our thoughts and prayers go out to them. So this time the end of video challenge, we're linking the GoFundMe for the family in the description. I'm going to try to put it somewhere on the screen. If you want to and you can help them out in any way, click the link, help them out. I think it's going to pay for like any final cost for the funeral, and then to support the little baby as they're is going to be growing up.
Yeah,
without its mom.
Yeah, it's hard to even wrap my mind around that. So definitely think of them, and if you can, definitely go do that. So made this far, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below, and we will catch you guys Friday.